make that announcement at the end. Okay. Well, hello, saints. Ask me if I'm nervous.
Nervous?
Yeah, I'm nervous. Yeah, God bless. Okay. I'm thankful to be here. Yes, I have not been feeling well in my body, so it's taken everything I have to do this tonight, but I didn't want to disappoint Brother Sanford, and I had this lesson for a long time, and it's really been on my heart and my mind, and I thought, it's worked good for me, and it's still working in my life good, and I thought, well, I think I'm going to bring it, and we're going to talk about compassion. I think we can all use a little more compassion in our life, and I'm a definition person, so the Latin word for compassion is compate, C-O-M-P-A-T-I. I listen to it, but to remember it, I might not be quite saying it just right, is to suffer with. Compassion is to empathize with someone who is suffering and to feel compelled to reduce the suffering. The Hebrew and Greek word to have mercy, to feel sympathy, and to have pity. And, the more that I got into this lesson and the more I was looking into verses on compassion, you just about say the whole word is compassion, because there's 5 elements of compassion: generosity, hospitality, objectivity, sensitivity, and tolerance. Now let's go over to Matthew 14, 13, and 14. And I'm going to back up just a little bit and go into 13. When Jesus heard of it, he departed. Well, when he heard that his disciples came and took up the body and buried it and went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard of it, he departed thence by the ship into the desert place apart. And when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the city, or the cities. And Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion towards them, and he healed their sick. Well, we find all through the New Testament where Jesus had such great compassion on just about everywhere he went. He was healing people and seeing to their needs. And I'm going to bring out a few of the thoughts I had. If you have any thoughts about it, just break in and let me know. If someone in the Bible that you know that had compassion or had compassion on them, I would share it with me. Matthew 9 and 36. Again, he says, but when he saw the multitude, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. So there again, we're seeing Christ having the compassion on mankind. I thought this was really interesting. It says, Jesus, very present in the world, is the ultimate act of compassion. And you think about that. I never really put compassion with that, but with Jesus and what he came to do. But he was so full of not just love, but that compassion that drove him. I've been really pondering this and really thinking about it, and compassion can be in so many different forms. You remember when Jesus went through the temple, he was very compassionate about what they were doing in the temple. He was a den of thieves. Isn't that what he said? And took the whip and was cleaning it up. So, compassion can come in many forms, just like it was generosity, hospitality, objectivity, sensitivity, and tolerance. Well, Jesus didn't have much tolerance for what was happening there. So we can have a variety of compassion. But really what I want to emphasize on tonight is compassion for one another, for what we've got right here. I believe we have compassion for sinners that we want saved. We have compassion for our loved ones, our children, maybe parents or whoever, out there, your friends, that you want to see saved. And your compassion draws you to pray for them or fast for them or talk to them. Your compassion is going to lead you to do things to see that person receives the love that you have in your heart for the gospel and for them individually. We did not deserve his sacrifice, but because of God's great love, we were treated with mercy and are called to live our lives with compassion and mercy. Psalms 86:15. This might be a short lesson, y'all. I'll try not to do any run-ons. (86:15). But thou, O Lord, art a God full of compassion and gracious, long-suffering, and plenteous in mercy and truth. And I like that scripture. He's full of compassion. And you know what? When we go through our battles, when we go through our physical need, he's right there with that compassion. He knows what we're going through. He knows what we need. And I'm glad that we have a God that is compassionate like that. It's been said, one day it's going to be Judgment Day. Right now we have his love and his compassion and his mercy and his long suffering. And I want to be on the side that compassion is working for me in my salvation. Psalms 145:8. (145:8). The Lord is gracious and full of compassion, slow to anger, and of great mercy. There it again. He's gracious and he's full of compassion. I want to go over to Galatians, the 5th chapter. And I did not know this about compassion, but I pulled it out of Galatians. Let's go to the 5th chapter in Galatians. Okay, 22 and 23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. Here you can put in with kindness. And I didn't know that kindness born of compassion. I didn't realize that. But you think about it, it probably does go hand in hand. Compassion and kindness. Compassion involves a tangible expression of love for those who are suffering. All right, let's go back into the Old Testament. Talk about suffering. The Israelites were suffering. Who came to their rescue? Moses. Who had that great compassion? He acted upon it. That love that he had for his fellow kinsmen and people drew him to have the compassion that he did, and he became a great leader because of that. I believe God just gave him a special dose of it because he was there in the forefront. Moses towards his people, he stood before Pharaoh and watched God's plan unfold, and he learned that God, with God's help, he could be a compassionate leader for his people. And he could have left them right where they were, but I believe that the love of mankind drove Moses to do what he did. What about Joseph? Yeah, his brothers sold him into slavery. had a hard life for years, and then he went under Pharaoh, and he became a great person under Pharaoh. And when, Joseph didn't know what was going to take place. He just knew he was sold by his brothers, and he could have developed a lot of attitudes down through the years because of that. But Joseph loved God, and God was full of compassion and mercy, and he showed it to Joseph in so many ways. And then when his brothers came before him, what did he do? He showed that compassion. And yeah, that's right. And I want to say for myself, just looking on it, I would think that some of the things that he could have battled, being sold and knowing it was your brothers that sold you into slavery and caused you this heartache in life. And, I'm just imagining all the stuff that would come with what he had to go through. But he was so sweet. He cried. He had to turn away from them. And he cried, and he knew what he needed to do. And he showed that compassion by giving them food. A compassionate person recognizes the suffering of others, then acts to help. That's what we need to do. We don't need to hold our compassion inside and say, oh, I feel so bad for so-and-so. They're going through so much. Well, what can you do? Show them is the best way. Maybe they live out of town. Send them a card, a phone call. It just takes a little act of compassion to go a long way. When somebody's down and sick, when somebody in here is going through a battle, what would it hurt to show that compassion? Because you're going to draw closer to somebody in here because of your compassion for them. And I believe it happens out there too. I believe that's why people, when they come in and they see us and our relationship with each other and our love for one another, I believe that our compassion for this salvation, I believe they really see it. I believe they feel it. And I believe it's probably because of each individual person here. You have a compassion about your salvation. I do. I want my compassion to bleed off on others, So, what about Ruth and Boaz? Well, let's start with Ruth. Ruth didn't leave her mother-in-law. Ruth had compassion. She loved her mother-in-law. What did she do? She followed her. She stayed with her. And she even went out in the fields to gather the wheat so they could eat. And then Boaz comes, and he sees her, and he has compassion because he knows that she has nothing, and the mother-in-law has nothing. And then, what does he do? He lets it be to where she's gleaning more and getting the better stuff. So that's a great, to me, that's a beautiful story, Ruth and Boaz, because she led a life of compassion, and then what did she do? She reaped it through Boaz. And I thought that was a beautiful story. 1 Peter 3:8. Finally, be ye all of one mind, having compassion one of another, love as brethren, be pitiful, be courteous. So there's our one little commandment that we need to do, having compassionate for one another. And I believe we do. I'm not saying that we don't, but sometimes stirring up our pure minds and hearts gets you to thinking about a word, and it did me. Compassion just stuck out to me one day, and it was just like a driving force. I had to know more about compassion, and it really has helped me. And I'll just be honest with you. I have battled probably in the last week. It's hard to have compassion on someone that treats you wrong. It's very hard. But you know what? God is faithful. And I've been going through that battle with a certain person. And no matter what I do, no matter how I act, no matter how much compassion I show, it seems to backfire on me. My honesty or whatever just seems to backfire. But you know, I am bound and determined that I'm going to work more and more on this compassion towards that one person, because that one person needs it more than anybody else right now in my life. And I don't want to give up. And I've found it easier not to hate someone than to have compassion on someone that does things that they bring harm to themselves and to others around them. So, you know, it's a little more challenging, but I know God's faithful, and He's gonna give me what I need. He's done it many times over in different fruits of the Spirit that we need whenever we need it. If we need more love, if we need more patience, kindness, gentleness, whatever it is, God's gonna give it to us. And compassion is my need right now. Compassion involves a tangible expression of love for those who are suffering. Okay, I've already read that one. Let me go back over here. Okay, the compassion of our Heavenly Father, Psalms 86:15. Let's see about it. Psalms 86:15.
You read that?
I did?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to read it again,
Okay.
just so we can get it. 86:15. That's what happens when you study and you rewrite and study and rewrite again. But thou, O Lord, art a God full of compassion and gracious, long-suffering, plenteous in mercy and truth. So that is our God. You know, His compassion is infinite. He's never going to run out on compassion for us. It's external. In fact, His compassion is new every morning. That's the way we need to look at our compassion. Every morning, you know, maybe even pray about it. God, give me more compassion for mankind. Says compassion alludes, the definition is to make indirect, to kindness and sympathy, which you can see that. They go hand in hand. Kindness and sympathy gives you that compassion. Compassion means someone else's heartbreak becomes your heartbreak. Another's suffering becomes your suffering. Well, we see that when we share our burdens, just like with Sister Janet. You know, her sickness. You know, our compassion leads us to want to pray for her and to check on her, and you know, others, Brother James, you know, just, I think compassion can be in so many different areas of our life if we really took that word and we just used it every day and just reminded ourselves, get up in the morning and say, I want more compassion. What can I do? What can I do to have more compassion? What's going to come my way to have more compassion? Which is kindness and sympathy too, on the same hand. We can see this in action with the Good Samaritan. I love this. Let's go to Luke 10. I love this one. This one to me is right up there of the stories to like. 10 and 29. But he, willing to justify himself, said unto Jesus, and who is my neighbor? And Jesus answering said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, and wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. And by chance there came down a certain priest that way, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. This was a priest. Where was his compassion? Where was his kindness? Where was his love? Exactly right. I mean, he was half dead. And likewise, a Levite, when he was at the place, came and looked on him, actually looked on him, and passed by on the other side. He didn't even want to get near him. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him. His love was driving him to do something. He just was not going to let him lie there. And he went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow, when he departed, he took out 2 pence, and gave them to the host, and said unto him, Take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay. That, to me, that's the kind of compassion I want. Whoever, it doesn't matter. It didn't matter who this person was. He just saw that he was in need. This Samaritan saw that he was in need of help, and he took care of it. And not only that, he gave money to continue to take care of him. He just didn't get him off the streets. He helped. He cleaned his wounds and gave him what he needed, and got him to a place that could help him even further.
Sister Norm, I was just thinking about this before you even brought this up, because this was showing great compassion. As Jesus used this as an example of compassion, that priest, and Jesus knows that priest, that Jewish priest, should have had that compassion. All right, that Levi should have had compassion. But the compassion came from a Samaritan that the Jews don't even
Recognize.
I just treat them as dogs.
Right.
I like what the woman said that was very, she said, even they eat the crumbs under the master's table. So she had faith in believing that Jesus was going to do something for her, or whatever it was, can't remember. But, he didn't, he said compassion can come through anybody. But of anybody should be us. I'm talking about should be me. And I like the way you said, let's look at compassion every day. What can we do for somebody?
Right.
Where I'll fall short, I want more of it.
Yeah,
That's
me
good.
too. Me too, brother. I do too. I want more compassion. Daddy?
Some years ago, I put a kind of a study on this compassion deal too. And I don't remember exactly what brought me to do that, but in the study of it, I discovered that a lot of people use the word compassion on somebody or whatever when they should be using pity.
Mm-hmm.
Because pity, you can have pity on somebody and not do that.
Right.
But if you have compassion on
It's gonna move you.
somebody, it's gonna do something about it.
Exactly right. And that's the examples that we're reading here. You're right.
That's studied to me for many years.
Pity is not compassion, is what you're saying.
About what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I was repeating it so the internet people could hear, but pity is not compassion. Because you can pity someone and do nothing. But compassion is going to drive you because of the love that you have in your heart, soul, and mind for whatever the situation is.
Sister Donna, I don't know if you're gonna get to her yet, but Dorcas was another one that.
Yes.
Great compassion.
Yes, I had her and I scrapped her, but you can tell me about it. She's in there.
Yeah. See, when
Dorcas.
we think about her making coach, but really, she really ministered to people.
Yes.
We would not have missed what she done.
Right.
It wasn't just the coach, but that's what we look at, what she did, but the thing was, it's more than that.
They had a great
They went to-
morning
they
for
went to
them.
Weeping
Yes.
too. They missed,
Yes.
lost somebody very special.
Right, yes. Because of her acts, they were able to have great compassion towards her because of what she stood for, helping and stuff. I was,
think Esther could be put in.
oh yes, Esther, I'm telling you, this has really been rocking in my mind. It's just, there's so many good examples for us to look into and go home and search some of these back in the Old Testament again. I think about the 2 women and the 1 child Remember when the one child, the baby died, and,
Yeah.
you know, to me, that was great compassion that king had in that situation. And then the mother was willing to give that child up to see that child whole instead of cut asunder. So, you know, there's some great stories in here that could help us on a day-to-day basis. It says, how do we activate compassion? Be a good listener.
That's good.
When we're here in our congregation and we have prayer requests, be a good listener, because you just might hear something that might just drive you to do something. You know, like I said, whether it's a card, a phone call, a text, whatever. And sometimes through our testimonies, we might not reveal everything, but we might reveal enough to know that we're in trouble as far as just battles, you know. And it says a lot when saints gather together and really hover around people that are going through it. There's a support system that comes along with compassion. And that's kind of what I'm trying to lead to for us. Volunteer. When you volunteer for stuff, it helps you to have more compassion. When I was doing the nursing homes, I was driven so much with compassion for those people that are in nursing homes that have no one that ever comes to see them. Oh, it just breaks my heart that family members would just throw them away. Pray for an increase of compassion. Like I said, on a daily basis, put it in your prayer life, you know, until you get to the point that you know compassion is just an automatic thing. It's just there, and you just don't even recognize you have it because it's just always in motion for you. And you know, I remember, I was pondering this. I remember when I went to Seattle, Leah was working. She grabs me before I go out the door to go down to the little town where she's at. She says, Mom, you cannot save the world. Don't stop at everybody that's a homeless person, because she knew me. I would be trying to fix their problem while I was there, you know, and I did. Y'all, that was the hardest thing for me to walk by someone that's laying on the ground and it's cold and they're dirty and they don't look like they've ate or took a bath. That was hard on me. I could weep thinking about it, you know. That's the kind of compassion we need for, you know, I really can't do anything. I pray for them. And if opportunity arises for me to help in some way, I'm all willing to. But that's all I have on compassion. Anybody else have anything else?
Sister Donna was thinking as a person in our day and time, and I greatly admire, I don't know a whole lot about her, but I thought about Mother Teresa, you know.
Oh, yes.
She was well known, you know, you may not agree exactly with, you know, what she believed, but yeah, she had compassion in her life, showed it, you know, and you see and you read a lot about that she really had compassion, and that's a good attribute, and that's an attribute that Christians should have, and we do have. But I was thinking about when she mentioned about Christ going into the temple, and you think, you know, how could that be compassion? But I begin to think he had compassion because those people were taking advantage of the people of God, you know. They was robbing them and charging them a lot more
It
for
stirred
these
him up.
things.
Yeah.
So it stirred him up. So he did have compassion because
Yes.
that was the house of God.
He was defending the house of God.
He was defending the people of God that was
right.
being took advantage of. So,
Right.
you know, I never had thought of it that way, but that's what I thought about.
Yeah, that's good. And back in the 1900s, wasn't it Sister Faith? Is that her name? Yeah. Just look at her, you know. And then what's that sister's name? She's down in Jamaica, I think. Sister Erica. Look at the compassion she has, that she's living there among them and, you know, bringing the gospel to them. So compassion is a lot of different avenues, and we could really use it in this day and time. Okay, I do have an announcement. Several of us sisters are gonna, start cleaning for Labor Day weekend, start cleaning downstairs. If you can, make it, we would appreciate the help, everybody that we can get.